One. Welcome, everyone. I'm here with some of my closest friends and colleagues to make an announcement of a new practice we are offering the world. I was in uh, it was sort of a gathering of people who lead these kinds of communities in Bergerac, and we were doing a large group practice. And I had a kind of insight in that practice that I shared with that group of very high qualified leaders and practitioners, and they all resonated with it very deeply. And I thought we should pick it up in some fashion. This was the insight that we needed to get a practice that did sort of a couple of things. Um, it would involve the whole of the person, the whole of the self, but it wouldn't be self-centered. It wouldn't be egocentric. And uh, in discussion with these group of fine people who I'll introduce in a moment, we got the idea that that was Plato's pivot point. That was the point he was trying to get people to. And then we cottoned on to the idea that what Plato was primarily trying to do in a lot of the Socratic dialogues was take a personal problem, really get people connected to it, and then lift it up into a shared existential dilemma in which we could bring the appropriate virtues to bear upon it. And then it could be carried back down into that personal problem within a person's life. So, as I said, I got together with Ryan Barton, who unfortunately couldn't be here, Rick Rapetti, Taylor Barrett, Christopher Masterpietro, and Ethan Say. And I said, gentlemen, let's put our collective intelligence together. And we've been working on this a lot. We've been practicing, discussing, refining, practicing, discussing, refining, practicing, discussing, and refining. A practice that is designed to integrate with our other practices, especially dialectic into Dialogos. We call it the Socratic Search Space. And I'm now going to turn it over to each one of these fine gentlemen to give you their take on this and why it could be of value to you. So let's start with Christopher Masterpietro.
All right. I'm excited that we're actually doing this. This has been a long time in the making. We've been at this for quite some time and a lot of care and a lot of iterations and a lot of dial adjusting. So I think we've got something that we feel confident enough to actually share. That's exciting. My sense of this practice is that it's trying to make relevant the so much of the work we've been doing in the last couple of years in a more concrete, practical way. It's one thing to get a group of people and contemplate a virtue. I think that has a lot of value by itself, make no mistake. But it's very open-ended, right? It opens into a question. It opens into a question sometimes that's not even formulated because it has to do with those forces and influences that we aspire to and live by. But it's sometimes not actually distilled into something that we take back with us and execute. And the Socratic search space has to do with a problem in the relationship between the concrete scale of our lives, which is filled with very, very specific moments of impasse and specific pains and dilemmas and things that make us feel stuck and things that get us kind of things that trip us in our lives. And that's where a lot of our attention goes on a day-to-day basis. We don't spend a lot of time, most of us, open-endedly contemplating virtue. We spend our time poring over very specific problems that vex us. And yet, in our intuition, I think all of us, we have the sense that there's a very, very real living relationship between contemplating virtue in a general sense and dealing with the minute-to-minute problems that dog us. But how do we thread the needle? How do we actually connect those two things together? The idea being that to solve a specific problem, it's not really about usually solving the specific problem. It's about becoming the kind of person that knows how to place that problem in the right perspective, in the right context. And that usually finding resolution in problems is sort of downstream, if you will, of being able to take a certain stance and a certain perspective on what's important, what's valuable, what prevails over other things in your life, being able to order things together internally and out in your relationships and so forth. So this practice to me is really about that. It's about how do we take the highest, most abstruse philosophical contemplation when it comes to virtue, and how do we actually make sure that it's connected and continuous to the way that we live and breathe our problems every day? And can we do that in such a way that they can speak to one another? The point of the practice is not to solve a problem, to be clear. It's not to, at the end of the practice, the point isn't to make a decision or come to a specific resolution, but it is trying to make that connection between the idea of virtue and the cultivation thereof on, let's say, the higher level of abstraction, and the specific way that we meet a problem, the specific way that we meet the demand of a problem, and who we are in the face of the problem on the and the sort of the higher resolution, more practical ground of life. So I think I'll stop there. That's probably enough for me.
Thank you, Chris. Rick.
Yeah, thank you. I really love doing this practice. I really enjoy it for a variety of reasons. One of the main reasons for me is as a philosophical counselor, I've often joked about, oh, I don't need a psychiatrist. I need a team. All right. Well, this is a team. This is a distributed cognition thing, right? Because we're going to have groups of people who are like-minded, who are all bringing to bear the kind of skills that we exercise in dialectic, the Dialogos. But that's more of an apophatic thing where the virtue is opening up and becoming more complex and unwieldy and all of that. This is more of a blends that with a cataphatic thing. We're not, like Christopher said, we're not solving a problem, but we're zeroing in on that aspect of the problem that's universal, that we all share and suffer from. And we're, as a group mind, we're figuring out what's the kind of being that I am, what's the kind of skills that I need, what are the ways in which I could go about being the kind of person who could solve this problem on my own. So it's just a fascinating blend of techniques. It has an element, and I remember the first time I think that John and I talked about Nelsonian Socratic dialogue, which is a cataphatic practice. I remember John saying, "Oh, we need something like that." Well, this is kind of like our modified, very modified version of something like that, because it is cataphatic, but it also it uses the apophatic. It's an excellent blend of a bunch of psychotechnologies that are like the best of all the skills that we've cultivated in this set of practices. So we're really excited about sharing it and doing it ourselves. And I'll say this, like, you can come in with a problem and hope that your problem gets picked as a group member, but there'll be opportunities to shift it around. So the more times that you do this, not only will you get help figuring out how to solve your problem, or how to go about being the kind of person who does the sorts of things and thinks in the kinds of ways or whatever that will help you solve your problem, but you're going to learn vicariously by helping others. So it's a great thing. And I guess I'll pass it on to Ethan.
Yeah, I can speak a little bit about the experience of the practice from the inside. And there's a way in which, when I'm faced with a problem, and I wonder if this is shared by folks also listening, that there's a way in which I tunnel vision. And then it's, oh no, this problem feels incredibly unique to me. And there's something precious about that. And what this practice does is to, like, hook it in and open it up and bring it to a place where it's like, actually, it's not that unique to me, but that doesn't take away from it. In fact, makes it shareable. And by bringing in the dialectic to Dialogos, it gives, I think the Socratic Search Space properly offers a home and a place for the virtue to sit in relation to, right, one's life, one's relationships, and the ways in which that virtue can have a ripple effect all throughout. And having done this I think we're working on this for about like 6, 7, more than that, actually. More than that if we think about it from a conceptual standpoint, even as far as it began in 2023, is that I think this practice really develops the capacity to recognize the depths of each problem on an existential level, and to be able to meet it with a sense that, there is something in here that has a home for a virtue. I just don't know it yet. I don't know what that is yet. And I need to be in a group, in a practice, in a structure that's tight enough, clean enough, precise enough to help carve out that room, or lay the foundations at least for that virtue to sit and then spiral out into life. So that's all I'll say about it, and then I'll pass it on to Taylor.
Hmm. Yeah, thanks. I'm just sort of sitting here with some amusement of like, oh, all you guys said everything I wanted to say about it. What's there left to say? Um, I think there's a lot happening actually in so many ways. I've been considering this isn't so much a practice as it is a process. And that in many ways, and I think this is sort of what Rick was saying, is that this culminating practice in many ways is also an ecology into itself. There's just so many sort of angles from which we can sort of explore the problem and the shareable dilemma that, as Rick was saying, even if yours doesn't get picked, there's still a lot of value because of the shared context of just being human and sort of living a life that we can generally find within ourselves the dilemma that has been brought forward. So even though there is sort of the spark, there is the person who has introduced the problem that we all sort of, oh, I want to look into that. There's always going to be this implicit resonance piece that has our interest too, like, oh, maybe I can learn something through exploring that as well. So, as John might say, this is very much the collective, this represents the collective intelligence of the distributed cognition of bringing people together to tackle something from multiple angles, like, oh, let's look at this from over here. And what's it look like from over here? And we get to do this together as a group to really raise the salience. And this practice contains dialectic into Dialogos. So I'm really excited about it. Going back to what Christopher was saying, I think one of the more important things or important features of this particular practice is that it has a more intentional, practical application rather than the general, idea of personal growth or unfolding. I mean, that is here and present. But what's also present is an actual opportunity to integrate the experience because of the salience of the dilemma that we're always facing on a day-to-day basis. So I'm really excited about the more purposeful intent. Practice for the sake of practice, of course, as many of you know, is very valuable. But practice for the sake of progress in one's life in a practical way is really exciting. So I'm so looking forward to be able to introduce this and bring this to everyone and see how it works and lands for you. And with that, we'll be doing that February 8th and 9th on the weekend, Saturday and a Sunday, 10 Eastern to 4 Eastern, so 6 hours each day. You can sign up for it on Awaken to Meaning and check the show notes or the comments section or whatever you call that piece underneath the video, and it'll have the link and a coupon code for a period of time to get a discount. So yeah, I'll pass it back to you, John.
Thank you, my friends. This is wonderful. Like all of you, I'm excited and enthusiastic about this. I kept saying throughout how grateful I was for all of you, how far we were able to take this beyond what I could have foreseen when the idea first came to me. We exemplified a lot of what we all are oriented towards and how we actually created this practice with a lot. That's not even the right way. The way we gave birth to this practice, there was a lot of virtue and virtuosity involved, and I thank you all for it very much. So everyone, take a look at the notes. We really strongly encourage you to add this to your ecology of practices, because I think Taylor summed it up well. It's culminating, and it is like an ecology of practices unto itself. And so take good care, everyone.